Jews have been storytellers for over 3,000 years.
But what does Jewish storytelling look like today?
I'm Stephen Smith.
And I'm Heather Smith.
Welcome to Our Jewish Story, the podcast where we explore the traditions of Jewish narrative, why capturing contemporary stories matters now more than ever. We also share voices from the Our Jewish Story archive.
Real people, real stories, the full mosaic of Jewish life.
This is Our Jewish Story. So, let's get started. How much do you know about Sikhs? Really, it's a serious question. I'm not asking what you've absorbed from a recent news headline or a passing reference on some TV show, but what do you actually know about Sikhs from Sikhs themselves? Have you ever sat with a Sikh family and asked them what their faith means to them? Do you understand the significance of the turban, the kirpan, or the langa? Could you explain why Sikhism emerged, what its core teachings are, what Sikh life looks like from the inside? There are around 25 million Sikhs in the world, and we probably all know someone who has a Sikh background too. So what do we really know? Now, ask the same question about the 5 million Jains, or about the 1 million Druze, or the 17 million Mormons. Any religious minority that you might be able to pick out to which you do not belong, how much do you really know? Now, if you're a professor of comparative religion, you may have an answer for most of the above, and thank you. But for most of us, most of the time, what we know about what it means to be Sikh or Druze is not likely to be very high. And such ignorance is not malicious. It's simply the result of never having access to the authentic voices of those communities, never having been invited to hear their stories or be in their homes or their religious places. What we carry is often imagined or informed by popular stereotypes. This is the condition in which most of the world encounters Jews. Like the minority religions I just referred to, there are a mere 16 million Jews on the planet of 8 billion people. That's 0.2% of humanity as a whole. That means that the overwhelming majority of people alive today have never had a meaningful conversation with a Jewish person, even if they know someone Jewish. They've never been to a Shabbat dinner. They've never heard someone explain what the high holidays feel like from the inside, let alone go to a service, or why a mezuzah hangs on the doorpost, or what it means to sit shiva. And yet, apparently everyone has opinions about Jews. This is the peculiar condition of Jewish existence that we live in. We live in the imagination of the world far more than we live in its reality. The banker, the media mogul, the unforeseen puppet master, the rootless cosmopolitan, these figures, unfortunately, have never been based on actual Jewish lives, but are perceived to be Jewish identities. They're projections, fantasies, inherited tropes passed down through centuries of literature, theology, and at times blatant propaganda. Here is what we must understand. Many people who carry these images in their minds, or at times even voice them as a matter of fact, are not the antisemites we imagine, which is also a trope. Non-Jews who don't understand Jews hate Jews. That's a trope. Some may indeed hate Jews, but not for the reason of ignorance. When the only Jewish figures you encounter are stereotypes in films or passing references in conspiracy theories or abstractions in political debates, those images fill the void that actual Jewish voices might otherwise occupy. The question is, are we occupying that void ourselves? You see, ignorance is not hatred in its own right, but ignorance is the soil in which hatred grows. And unfortunately, we've seen it growing all too virulently recently. Now, last Rosh Hashanah, I wrote about a storm on the surface of the ocean, that we're in the middle of this storm, but it's the deep currents that flow beneath that we need to think about, because these anti-Semitic narratives, they are the storm. They're violent, they're consuming, they're demanding our attention in every moment of every day. But we cannot spend our energy on those waves of anti-Semitism. We need to tend to the current itself, because we are the ocean. The current is our story, not the story others tell about us, but the story we tell about ourselves. For too long, we've allowed our narrative to be reactive. We counter the lies, we fact-check the distortions, we produce studies and reports and op-eds explaining why the accusations are false. All of this is necessary, don't get me wrong, but it is not sufficient. The uncomfortable truth is that countering a narrative you didn't write is not a strategy for success. When we spend all of our energy responding to hatred, we cede the fundamental power of something we mastered millennia ago: storytelling itself. We need to stop defending and start defining. And so this is why we need a global Jewish archive, and why we need it now. Now, this is not going to be an archive of famous Jews or dramatic rescues or heroic resistance. All of those stories matter too, and this archive will contain them all. But what we need is an archive of ordinary Jewish lives. The grandmother in Buenos Aires, who still makes her mother's brisket from the old country. The convert in Los Angeles celebrating their 3rd year as a Jew. The secular Israeli, who hasn't been to synagogue in decades, but for some reason still fasts on Yom Kippur. Now, these stories have never been systematically collected globally, and these are the stories that matter most. Why? Well, I have 3 reasons to explain this. The first thing is this: we owe it to ourselves. It's astonishing how much of our past disappears into the mists of time, undocumented. The details of your great-grandmother's migration, you know them? The name of the village your family left behind, you know that? The reason your grandfather stopped being observant or started again, you know the story? Maybe you do. Maybe it's just a vague myth. Those small rituals that made your childhood Jewish in ways you can barely articulate, they matter to who you are today, and they matter to someone else in future, because every generation loses some of these threads. Every family watches as the living memory fades into silence. We tell ourselves we'll write it down someday, record it sometime, ask the questions now while there's still someone to answer them. Because sometime it'll become too late. I'm surprised how often, in fact, it becomes too late. And so that's why an archive is an act of preservation. It says this life matters. This story deserves to endure. The way we lived, what we valued, what we struggled with and for, and celebrated and passed on, all of this is worth remembering. We collect these stories for our own future, so that our grandchildren's grandchildren will know not just that Jews existed in this moment, but how we lived, what meaning we made of the world, what it felt like from the inside. And so that is all for us. Secondly, we need to strengthen our own identity. Jewish identity is under siege. Again, I must say. The anxiety that many Jews feel today is not paranoia. It's reasonable to respond to a world where old hatreds have found a new vocabulary, where Jewish students are made to feel unwelcome on campuses, where the word Zionist has become a slur. It's reasonable to fear all of that. But Jewish continuity has never been about external conditions. It's always been about internal confidence, flourishing in hard times, knowing where we came from, understanding the depth of our tradition, feeling connected to something larger than ourselves. Now, when you hear 100 different Jews tell their stories, about their migrations, their choices, their ways of making meaning, you begin to see a pattern beneath the variation. You recognize yourself in people you've never met. You understand that Jewish identity is not fixed, like a set of rules, although we have rules, but a living conversation across centuries and continents. And this is what an archive offers. Not a prescription about how to be Jewish, but a mirror that reflects the extraordinary diversity and resilience of Jewish life as it's lived today. It reminds us that we belong to something ancient and ongoing, but present, that our individual stories are just chapters in a much longer book, but our chapter matters too. At a time when many Jews feel uncertain about their place in the world, or feel the shifts in the world, this archive becomes a source of strength and continuity. We know who we are because we can see where we've been and also who we're becoming. Thirdly, we do need to share this with the wider world. Explain who we actually are, not who others say we are. The stereotypes exist because Jews exist only in the imagination of most of humanity. Their lies persist because there is no accessible countervoice, no narrative to help them understand it and shed light in a different way. The hatred spreads because people have no way to encounter actual Jewish lives and understand who Jewish people are. An archive, a first-person narrative, changes this equation. When someone wonders, what are Jews really like? They can hear it directly from Jews themselves, not through intermediaries, not through headlines or Hollywood, not through the distorted lens of those who wish us harm, but in our own voices, in the calm, not in the storm, telling our own stories on our own terms. Now, I want to say this is not about public relations or image management. We've heard a lot about that. This is not a PR issue. It's about transparency. It's about security. It's about the fact we have nothing to hide. Our lives, our values, our struggles, our joys, our ordinary days, our extraordinary ones too, can all be shared openly with anyone who wants to understand. And not as a social media feed, but as an authentic, deep storytelling process. We are not trying to change antisemites or change the way in which people think about us. Because they are not the majority. The majority are simply uninformed. They have inherited images and ideas without ever encountering the reality. So this creates a new reality. For them, an archive of authentic Jewish voices is an invitation. Come and see. Listen to who we actually are. Replace the caricature with a person with whom you can have a conversation. Our Jewish story is very simple. Capture the stories, strengthen our identity, share with the world. We are the inheritors of over 3,500 years of narrative tradition. We are the people who wrote the book, literally, on what it means to preserve memory and pass it forward. We know that stories are not decorations, but foundations, that a people that loses its story loses itself. And we're not about to lose ourselves. So the question is not whether we can do this. We've been doing it since Abraham left Ur. The question is whether we will do it now, deliberately, systematically, and at the scale that this moment demands of us. Every Jewish person has a story. And each of those stories matters. And together they form something unprecedented. A living archive of who we are, told in our own voices, preserved for our own future and shared openly with a world that has too long relied on false imagination instead of reality. It's time to let them hear from us directly and in our own words. Our Jewish story is building this archive one voice at a time. That includes yours. One community at a time. That includes yours. And so if you want to share your story or help collect the stories of your community, we invite you to join us, because there are many stories to tell, but we are one Jewish people.